Hello everyone, my name is Kailin Liu and I'm a secondary school teacher teaching English as an additional language in Melbourne, Australia. Today I'm very happy to present the chapter I co-wrote with Dr. Julie Choi for the book Teaching English in Global Contexts, titled Exploring Meaning Through Translanguaging Practices. So in this presentation, I'll talk about why we started to write this book chapter and how this book chapter is going to help language teachers around the world. As you can see, this is where our chapter is situated in the book. So growing up learning English in China, this is how I usually learn English connectives. I would often see a table like this, which has several connectives that share the same meaning. For example, also, besides, in addition, and moreover all mean 另外 in Chinese, and we use them to add an additional point. And our teacher often encourages us to use different connectives to showcase our wide range of vocabulary and to make our writing more interesting. However, when I did try to use these connectives interchangeably, I often hear people say my sentence sounds weird, as you see in this example. A lot of them may say, besides, sounds a bit weird in this sentence, and also may be a better choice. So, what is this issue about all these connectives? And one night, Julie and I started to explore the meaning and use of these connectives. You can find the exact process of our exploration in our chapter, but here I just would like to stress that the enlightenment I've got from that dialogic exploration is that these connectives, which I thought had the same meaning, actually mean very differently. So this enlightenment really got me to think about the whole English language education that I had, which too often focus on the forms, the accuracy and the diversity of forms, rather than actually think about meaning. So what does meaning mean? Here, when I talk about meaning, I don't mean the superficial meaning, such as, also and besides, all mean 另外 in Chinese, and they mean to show an additional point. What I'm talking about is a more contextualized, a more nuanced, a deeper meaning, the meaning that we mean in social context by different people, and the multiple layers and nuances of meaning that people can make through languages. And as language teachers, when I think about this, when I teach students languages, I'm not just teaching them the accuracy or the diversity of forms. I'm actually trying to help them make and expand their meaning through languages. And that is why Julie and I started to write this book chapter. We would like to advocate for a meaning-based translanguaging approach, which can help teachers develop knowledge in terms of how they can support their learners to mobilize various language resources their learners have to make and expand their meaning. In order to do that, first, it's very important for teachers to understand these two concepts. What is translanguaging and what is translation? Translation, first of all, is not an unfamiliar term for teachers. Translation is something commonly done by a lot of language learners in their language learning processes. However, as teachers, we often have this love and hate attitude towards translation. On one hand, we value learners' first languages, and we would like to help them use their first languages to make meaning in their second language. Yet on the other hand, we worry that, giving too much time for learners to translate and using their first languages would actually eat up the opportunity for learners to actually think and learn in their second language. So how should we think about this dilemma? In this section of the chapter, we argue that this concept called translanguaging can offer us a different perspective to think about this situation. So in this section of the chapter, we discussed what is translanguaging and what is translation, what's the relationship between these two concepts, how they are different and yet closely connected, and how meaning may be lost or captured in the process of translation. And ultimately, as teachers better understand these two concepts, we believe that they're developing the lenses for them to find meaning making opportunities in many learners' translation or other multilingual practices for their language learning and teaching. And having lenses is the first step, but it's not enough because all teaching and learning does not happen in a vacuum. So, for teachers to effectively enact meaning based translanguaging approaches in their own classrooms, they also need to know well about their own context and the content they're going to teach. So, what exactly do teachers need to know? Why? And how can they develop such knowledge? That's why in this section of the chapter, we actually answer these questions and offer ideas and tools for teachers to build knowledge about their learners and their teaching and learning context, as well as the content of teaching. Once the teachers have a good understanding of the context and the content they're working with, then they need concrete strategies and techniques to help their learners make and expand their meaning. That's why in this section of the book chapter called Teaching Suggestions, we offered a few strategies and examples for teachers to use with their learners. For instance, instead of simply asking their learners to translate texts, teachers can encourage the learners to focus on the process of translation, discussing how they translated the text, what tools did they use, how did they use them, and why, to facilitate this negotiation of meaning and expansion of meaning. Also, teachers could engage in collaborative dialogue with their learners to solve linguistic problems. And if you want more information about the collaborative dialogue, you can also find more details in the paper that I wrote with Julie. Overall, in this book chapter, we would like teachers to understand and remember that meaning should be at the center of language teaching. If we only focus on what different languages are present in class, how many languages are occupying how much time, and whether students' product of translation are correct or accurate, we're then losing this sight of meaning, losing this picture of how students are using all their languages and knowledge resources to negotiate, make, and expand their meaning. So, to help teachers better experience and think deeper about the concepts and ideas we discussed in this book chapter, in the discussing, taking actions, and expanding further section, we offered a series of questions and tasks for teachers to try out by themselves and discuss among themselves. For example, teachers could translate a short news item from English to the language of their own local audience. Then they could compare their translation with others and discuss their choice of language. How did they translate? Why did they use this language, not the other? To facilitate this negotiation and expansion of meaning. Also, teacher could discuss questions such as how they feel about learners using Google Translate to write their assignments in English. Is it always okay? And in which cases might this tool be problematic and why? Also, in this section, we would offer teachers multiple websites and resources for those who want to explore further on the use of meaning based translanguaging approaches to language learning and teaching. And here are some of the key references if you want to know more about the meaning based translanguaging approaches we discussed in our book chapter. I hope you enjoy this presentation and thank you very much for listening.